Billy the Kid, his name still rings loud. He was a legend, a young outlaw in the Old West. He lived fast and died young, or so the story goes. Most people know the official version of his death. Pat Garrett, the sheriff, killed him. Garrett shot Billy in a dark room in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. This happened on July 14th, 1881. Billy was 21 years old. That's what the history books tell us. That's what Garrett himself wrote in his book, The Authentic Life of Billy the Kid. It's a clear story. It has a beginning, a middle, and a very definite end. But sometimes clear stories have shadows. People start to wonder, was it really that simple? Did Billy the Kid truly die that night? Or did he somehow escape? Did he fake his own death? This isn't a new idea. It's been talked about for a long, long time. Some people believe it with all their heart. They say Billy was too smart, too wily to be caught so easily. They say he had help. They say the man Garrett killed wasn't Billy at all. It's a wild thought. It goes against everything we think we know. But the idea just won't die. Let's look at the official story first. Sheriff Pat Garrett was on Billy's trail for months. Billy had escaped jail before. He killed 2 deputies in a famous breakout from Lincoln Jail. Garrett felt pressure to catch him. He tracked Billy to Fort Sumner. This was a small, dusty town. It was where Billy had friends. He knew people there. On the night of July 14th, Garrett and his deputies hid in the dark. They waited in the house of Pete Maxwell. Maxwell was a friend of Billy's. Garrett thought Billy would show up there. And he did. Billy walked into the house. It was dark. He saw 2 figures in the room. He called out, "Quienes, quienes." That means who is it in Spanish. Garrett pulled his gun. He fired 2 shots. One shot hit Billy in the chest, right above his heart. He fell to the ground. He died quickly. That's what Garrett said. That's what Maxwell said. Another witness, Deputy John Poe, also said this. Garrett's book paints a clear picture. Billy the Kid was dead. They buried him the next day in the Fort Sumner Cemetery. A simple wooden cross marked his grave. That was it. The legend of Billy the Kid was sealed. His wild life was over, but right away some things felt a little off to some folks. The identification of the body, for one. It happened in the dark. Garrett didn't recognize Billy at first. Maxwell identified him, but Maxwell was a friend of Billy's. Could he have had a reason to lie? Or was he simply mistaken in the dark? Garrett himself admitted that he didn't recognize Billy's voice until after he shot him. He just heard a man come in and he shot. It was a quick, sudden act, not a clear, calm identification. Also, Garrett's own account changed a bit over time, or at least the details he remembered. This isn't unusual. Memory can be tricky, especially during a tense moment, but it gave people reason to question. Some people whispered that Garrett had a reputation for stretching the truth. He wanted to be a hero. Killing Billy the Kid would certainly make him one. He needed to make sure everyone believed him. His book was his way of making sure the story stuck. He needed the fame. He needed the money from the book. And then there's the body itself. They buried Billy the next day. There was no real official inquest. No medical examiner, just friends and some townspeople. They dug a grave. They put him in it. That was the custom back then. But it wasn't a very rigorous process. It left room for doubt. What if the person buried wasn't Billy? What if it was someone else? A body that looked enough like him in the dim light. It sounds like a movie plot, but people genuinely considered it. Billy the Kid was a big name. He was famous even then. People knew his face. Many saw the body before the burial. But what if those who truly loved him, those who might help him, also knew the secret? What if they were part of a plan? It's a leap, but it's a leap many people took. The idea that Billy, the ultimate escape artist, could pull off one last, greatest escape, was very appealing. It fit his legend. He was always one step ahead. Maybe this time he was 2 steps ahead. The whole situation in Fort Sumner was ripe for rumors. It was a small, tight-knit community. Many people there liked Billy. They didn't like the lawmen who chased him. Some saw Billy as a Robin Hood figure. He was charming. He spoke Spanish. He was loyal to his friends. If anyone could get help to fake his death, it was Billy. So from the very beginning, the official story had these little cracks. They were just small at first. But over time, they grew wider. They allowed the idea of a faked death to take root. And once an idea like that takes root, it's very hard to dig out. People started to imagine how Billy might have done it. He was known for being smart. He was quick-witted. He was a master of disguise sometimes. He often used different names. He understood how people thought. He knew how to blend in. He was a smooth talker. He could charm people. Even people who were supposed to be his enemies sometimes found themselves liking him. This made him dangerous. It also made him hard to catch. He had escaped from jail multiple times. Once he picked the lock on his handcuffs, he shot his way out, he rode off. He seemed invincible. So for many, the idea of Billy just getting shot in the dark, without a fight, without a clever trick, felt wrong. It didn't fit his character, it didn't fit the legend, it felt too easy for Pat Garrett. And Billy was famous for his escapes. He was good at it. So how could he have done it this time? How could he have faked his own death? One theory is that he had a body double. It's a common idea in these kind of stories. Billy was small, he was young, maybe he found someone who looked enough like him. Someone who could be put in a situation where they would be shot. Perhaps this person was already dead. Or maybe they were a desperate drifter. It's a dark thought, but the Old West was a dark place sometimes. A small, anonymous body could be passed off as Billy in the dim light of that room. No one really looked too closely in those days. Identification wasn't like it is today. Who would help him with such a plan? Billy had many friends in Fort Sumner. He spoke Spanish, like many of the locals. He spent a lot of time with them. He danced with their daughters. He was part of their community in many ways. They saw him as one of their own. They didn't see him as a dangerous outlaw. They saw him as a friend. Pat Garrett, on the other hand, was an outsider. He was the law. He represented the government that many locals distrusted. So many people in Fort Sumner would have had a reason to help Billy. They would have wanted to protect him. Pete Maxwell was the man in whose house Billy was supposedly killed. Maxwell was a close friend. He was there. He identified the body. But what if Maxwell was in on it? What if he helped stage the whole thing? He could have hidden Billy. He could have shown Garrett a different body. Then he could have identified it as Billy. It's not impossible to imagine. People did extraordinary things for friends in those days. And people hated lawmen just as much. The story goes that Garrett was sitting in Maxwell's bedroom. He was waiting. Billy came in, he asked. Queen asked, Garrett shot him, but what if Billy was never there? What if he was already gone? What if the man who walked in was someone else, a decoy? Maybe the sounds were orchestrated, maybe the whole thing was a setup. It required a lot of trust. It required a lot of secrecy. But Billy had that kind of trust with some people. There's also the idea of a secret passage. Fort Sumner had old military buildings. They were built to last. They had cellars, they had tunnels sometimes. Could Billy have used one to escape? Could he have gotten out of the house unseen while Garrett thought he had cornered him? It adds to the mystery. It makes Billy seem even more cunning. Think about the circumstances. It was very late at night. It was very dark. The oil lamps gave off little light. Shadows were long. Details were hard to make out. This was not a well-lit crime scene. It was perfect for deception. It was perfect for a quick, confusing event. And then, once the body was identified, the pressure was off Garrett. He had his man. He had killed the kid. No one needed to question it further. The town wanted peace. Garrett wanted the glory. And then there's the burial. It was quick. It was informal. No one really authenticated anything. They just dug a hole and put the body in. This allowed for more doubt. If a body double was used, no one would be none the wiser. The body would decompose. Any clear identification would be lost forever. It left the door open for someone, years later, to say, hey, that wasn't Billy. The whole legend of Billy the Kid depends on him being a trickster. He was always outsmarting people. He always had a plan B, so it feels like this would be his ultimate trick, his grandest escape. To disappear from history, only to live out his life quietly, to become someone else. To start fresh. It's a very romantic idea. It fits the outlaw legend. He defied the law not just in life, but even in death. He beat the system one last time. So, the stage was set for future claims. The holes in the story, the character of Billy, the loyalty of his friends. All these things made it possible to believe that he might have found a way out. That he didn't die that night in Fort Sumner, that he just vanished, and that someday he might reappear. And that is exactly what some people claimed happened. The mystery of his death, or supposed death, became as famous as his life. It added another layer to the already complex legend of Billy the Kid. Decades passed after Billy the Kid's supposed death. The legend grew, movies were made, books were written, but the questions about his death never really went away. Then, in the 1940s, a new story emerged. It was a big one. It shook things up. A man named Ollie L. Brushy Bill Roberts came forward. He claimed he was Billy the Kid. He said he didn't die in Fort Sumner. He said he had faked his death. And he had lived for all these years. Brushy Bill Roberts was an old man then. He was living in Hiko, Texas. He was in his 90s. He told his story to a lawyer named William Morrison. Morrison was looking into a story about Billy the Kid. He was trying to get a pardon for Billy. That's when Brushy Bill came forward. He said he could give Morrison details no one else knew. He could prove he was Billy. Morrison was skeptical at first. Many people claimed to be famous figures. But Brushy Bill was different. He knew things. He had details that were very specific. They were things only Billy the Kid would know. He described events in Billy's life with amazing accuracy. He talked about the Lincoln County War. He talked about his friends. He talked about his jailbreaks. He recalled names, dates, and small details that weren't widely known. This made Morrison think twice. Brushy Bill had a physical appearance that matched old descriptions of Billy. He was short. He had a slight build. He had scars that matched known injuries of Billy the Kid. One particular scar was on his right wrist. Billy was known to have been shot in the wrist. Brushy Bill had a scar exactly like that. He also had a scar near his right eye. Billy also had a scar there. These were hard to fake. These were specific details. Brushy Bill's story of how he faked his death went like this. He said Pat Garrett was not alone in Fort Sumner that night. He said another man, a deputy named John Poe, was also there, but Poe was supposed to be waiting outside. Brushy Bill said that Garrett knew him. He said Garrett didn't want to kill him. Garrett wanted to capture him for the fame and the bounty, but Billy also had powerful friends. He was close to Governor Lew Wallace. Billy had promised to testify in a murder trial. In exchange, Wallace had offered him a pardon, but the pardon never fully came through. Brushy Bill said that Garrett, Pete Maxwell, and some other people helped him. They staged his death. They used another body, a man named Joe Hines. Hines had died a few days earlier. They put Hines's body in the place where Billy was supposed to be shot. Garrett then shot Hines's body. They buried Hines. Everyone kept quiet. Billy then rode off to Texas. He started a new life under a new name. This was Brushy Bill Roberts. He lived a quiet life as a ranch hand and farmer. He stayed hidden for decades. Brushy Bill said he waited until the 1940s to come forward because everyone who could identify him was dead. He felt it was safe then. He wanted to clear his name. He wanted that pardon that Governor Wallace had promised him. He wanted to be remembered as a man who kept his word, not just an outlaw. He wanted justice. Morrison, the lawyer, brought Brushy Bill to meet with people who had known Billy the Kid. One key person was Jose B. Montoya. Montoya was a member of the Tunstall Ranch gang. Billy had ridden with them. Montoya swore that Brushy Bill was indeed Billy the Kid. Another important witness was Delavina Maxwell. She was Pete Maxwell's cousin. She was like a mother figure to Billy. She also identified Brushy Bill as Billy the Kid. She said she recognized his eyes. She said she recognized his mannerisms. Her testimony was very powerful. There was even a claim that Brushy Bill was given a truth serum test. This was a crude form of lie detector test back then. The results were said to support his story. He told the same story while under the influence of the serum. This made his claims even more convincing to some. But Brushy Bill's story gained a lot of attention. It was compelling. It filled in the gaps that the official story had left open. It made sense to people who doubted Pat Garrett's account. It offered a romantic ending to the outlaw's tale. He didn't die. He lived. He escaped. He beat the system. It was the ultimate Western story. For many, Brushy Bill Roberts was not just a claimant. He was the real Billy the Kid. He was living proof that the legend was even bigger than anyone thought. The claim by Brushy Bill Roberts was a huge deal. It created a lot of excitement, but it also created a lot of arguments. People immediately started looking for proof, both for and against his story. Let's look at the evidence that made people believe Brushy Bill. First, his memory. He knew so many details about Billy the Kid's life. He talked about the Lincoln County War. He described old friends and enemies. He recalled events that only Billy would have been part of. He knew specific landmarks in New Mexico. He remembered certain phrases. He could even describe the layout of certain buildings. These details were often too specific to be made up by someone just reading books. He sounded like he had lived it. Then there were the physical similarities. Billy the Kid was described as small, around 5 feet 8 inches. Brushy Bill was also short. Billy had a distinct facial structure. Photos of Brushy Bill from the 1940s were compared to the famous tintype photo of Billy the Kid. Some people saw a clear resemblance in the eyes, nose, and overall bone structure. He had the scars on his wrist and near his eye, just like Billy was known to have. These were hard physical facts that gave his story weight. The testimonies from people who knew Billy were also very strong. Delavina Maxwell, who had known Billy since he was a boy, said Brushy Bill was him. She called him Hiko, which was a nickname for Billy. She was old. She was not easily fooled. She spent time with Brushy Bill. She was convinced. Jose B. Montoya, a former member of Billy's gang, also identified him. These were not just random people. These were people who had lived through those times. They knew Billy personally. The story about the truth serum also helped his case. While it wasn't a scientific test by today's standards, back then it was seen as a way to get to the truth. If Brushy Bill told the same story under duress, it made his claims seem more honest. He wasn't just making it up on the fly, he had a consistent narrative. But there was also a lot of evidence that went against Brushy Bill's claims. This is where the story gets complicated. The biggest issue was his age. Brushy Bill claimed he was born in 1859. This would make him the right age to be Billy the Kid. Billy was born in 1859 or 1860. However, official records for Brushy Bill Roberts show he was born in 1879. If this was true, he would have been too young to be Billy the Kid. He would have been a baby when Billy was supposed to be rampaging through New Mexico. This age difference was a huge problem for his story. His family also said he was born in 1879. They had birth records, they had census documents. These documents listed his parents and his birth year. It was hard to argue against official papers. His family had no reason to lie. They simply believed what the documents said. They believed their father was Brushy Bill Roberts, born in 1879, not Billy the Kid. Historians and researchers also pointed out inconsistencies in Brushy Bill's memory. While he recalled many details correctly, some details were wrong. He mixed up names. He got dates wrong sometimes. He confused events. This raised questions. If he was truly Billy, why would he make these mistakes? Some said he might have learned details from books and stories over the years. He lived in a time when Billy the Kid's story was very popular. He could have picked up information. The famous tintype photo of Billy the Kid was also used against Brushy Bill. Experts in facial recognition compared the photos. Many said the two men were not the same person. They pointed out differences in facial features. They said the resemblance was not strong enough. It was more wishful thinking than scientific proof. And then there's the motive. Why would an old man suddenly claim to be a famous outlaw? Some said it was for attention. Others said it was for money. There was a lot of money to be made from the story of Billy the Kid. Books, movies, personal appearances. The pardon itself could have been a reason. To clear his name before he died. These motives, while not proof he was lying, made people suspicious. The biggest hurdle for Brushy Bill was the lack of definitive, unassailable proof. In the 1940s, DNA testing didn't exist. There was no way to get a solid match. The evidence was circumstantial. It relied on memory, old documents, and the subjective view of photographs. Brushy Bill even went to New Mexico in 1950. He tried to get Governor Thomas Mabry to grant him a pardon. He wanted his name cleared. Governor Mabry listened to his story. He considered the evidence, but in the end, Mabry denied the pardon. He said there wasn't enough convincing evidence to overturn the official story of Billy the Kid's death. He felt Brushy Bill's claims were simply not believable enough. Brushy Bill died soon after, in 1950, without ever getting the pardon. The mystery remained unsolved. So, while Brushy Bill's story was captivating and had some compelling points, it also had serious flaws. The age discrepancy was hard to ignore. The official records for Brushy Bill's birth were a powerful counter-argument. It left the historical community divided. Some believed him, many did not, and the question lingered, was he a clever imposter, or was he truly the legendary Billy the Kid? The debate continues to this day. The story of Billy the Kid, whether he died or escaped, is a powerful one. It keeps people talking, it keeps people guessing. We have the official version. And Pat Garrett killed him. He was buried in Fort Sumner, but we also have the whispers. We have the claims. We have the lingering doubts, and that's what makes it so fascinating. The official story has its weaknesses. It was a quick death in the dark. The identification was not perfect. The burial was informal. Garrett himself had reasons to ensure his version of events became the accepted truth. These small cracks were enough for the idea of a fake death to take hold. People wondered if Billy, the great escape artist, had one last trick up his sleeve. Brushy Bill Roberts came forward years later. His story was detailed, it was consistent. He had a scarred body. He remembered names and events. He was identified by some who knew Billy. For many, this was proof. This was the legendary outlaw finally telling his tale. It was the ultimate romantic ending to a life of rebellion. But then we have the other side. Brushy Bill's age didn't match. Birth records showed he was too young, his own family contradicted his claims. Experts debated the photo comparisons. The New Mexico governor denied his pardon. There was no definitive proof. It leaves us with a real puzzle. So, did a famous outlaw fake his own death? When it comes to Billy the Kid, there is no simple answer. We don't have a clear yes or no. We have strong arguments on both sides. This is part of what makes the story so enduring. It's part of American folklore now. It's a tale that lives in that gray area between fact and legend. Why do these kinds of stories stick around? Why do we keep talking about them? I think it's because we love the idea of someone beating the system. We love the idea of an outlaw escaping justice one last time. It's a very human wish. We want to believe in the cleverness, the resilience, the ultimate freedom of someone like Billy the Kid. His story embodies a certain wild, untamed spirit of the Old West. The idea that he might have just slipped away, disappeared into the vastness of the American frontier, is a powerful one. It makes him even more legendary. The mystery also keeps history alive. It encourages people to dig deeper. It makes us question what we think we know. It reminds us that history is not always a neat, clear timeline. It's often messy. It's often open to interpretation. People's memories fade. Documents get lost. Motives get blurred. So, while we might never know the absolute truth, the story of Billy the Kid and the possibility of his fake death will continue to be told. It's part of his legacy. It's part of why he remains such a compelling figure. He was an outlaw who became a legend. And maybe, just maybe, he pulled off the greatest escape of all time. He left us with a mystery that might never be solved. And sometimes that's even better than a simple ending. It lets the legend live on, forever speculating, forever wondering.